Hello, and welcome to Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. I have the best surprise. Can you believe it? This is Mulder, Agent Mulder, and my bestie and my husband got him for me for Christmas. I'm so happy. I've had a really, really bad 6 months. And I guess the moral of the story is if you have a really bad 6 months, you get a puppy. He's a little bit timid and a little bit shy of strangers, but he is glued to my hip. So I don't know how this is going to go today. I'm hoping he'll just sit in my lap or sit on the floor. But isn't he the best? Look at his little rat tail. Can you see it? It's going to get fluffy like a palm. But right now, he looks a little bit like a bat. Can you say hi to everyone? Hi. I love him so much. I'm so happy I had to share him with you guys. All right, he seems settled in. So I told you guys that somebody made a comment last week calling me a grief peddler. Not a totally inaccurate statement, but one that really doesn't bother me because I know I am in good company when I say some of us are interested in the darker events that take place in our world. Our world is now connected by the internet. We can get news from across the earth minutes after it breaks. So sometimes it seems that crime is getting worse, violence is on the rise, and the state of our society is just plain bad. But in truth, the numbers don't always support that. And in fact, some cities have much lower crime rates than they did 10 years ago. But hold on, it does seem like in the last few weeks, we have had some really crazy stories break. People are losing it, and the behavior we've seen in the last several weeks has been disturbing, to say the least. Today, I have for you 5 breaking crime stories, people doing terrible things to each other. And you know me, I think it's important to discuss these matters. Only by discussing bad behavior and studying what causes it will we ever have a chance of slowing it. And the people in today's stories, we're going to need them to slow down. These are 5 breaking stories, January 2025. I'm your host, Stacy Lee. Let's begin. Our first story begins in Hope County, North Carolina. It's just 2 days into the new year of 2025, and while most of us were taking our holiday decorations down, and some of us were recovering from too much celebration the day before, one man was teetering on the edge of sanity. Well, okay, I take that back. A lot of us are teetering on the edge of sanity, but this guy went over it. This is 46-year-old Caleb Jones, and Caleb was on parole. He'd been arrested for violating a domestic violence protective order, communicating threats, and fleeing to elude arrest. When Caleb was arrested for those crimes, he used a bail bondsman to post bond. Now, for my foreign viewers here in the States, if you get arrested and you don't have the money to post bail, you can hire a bail bondsman. Pay that company, usually 10% of your bail, and they put up the rest, and then you get out of jail. But if you use a bail bondsman, you must appear in court or that company loses the bail they posted for you. And when that happens, these companies and their bondsmen and bondswomen can become very assertive. Well, Caleb's court date came and went, and he failed to show up. This means he forfeited his bond and broke his agreement with the bondsman. If the bond company doesn't want to lose the bail they've posted for someone, they have to bring the criminal immediately back to jail when that criminal doesn't show up for court. If the company doesn't do that, they lose the bail money posted for that criminal. So when Caleb doesn't show up for court, his bondsman is notified, and the bondsman then has to go out looking for Caleb in order to bring him back to jail. On January 2nd, the bondsman shows up at Caleb Jones' house in Hope County, North Carolina. An argument breaks out not only between the bondsman and Caleb, but between Caleb and his 73-year-old mother, Linda Hall, who also lives in the house. Caleb is arguing with the bondsman, and Linda comes over and begins telling her son that he has to go with them. Caleb is refusing. Linda gets between the argument, and then Caleb grabs an axe. As Caleb and Linda argue, it gets physical, and Linda is either hit with the axe or by Caleb, and she falls to the floor with grave injuries. With Linda out of the melee, Caleb then raises the axe and brings it down on one of the bondsmen, hitting him in the head and splitting his head open. The man is wounded, and the second bondsman runs from the house. The bondspeople retreat and call 911. The police arrive on the scene, and Caleb barricades himself inside the house. The police remain outside, and after some negotiating, they are able to convince Caleb to come out. He is arrested and taken into custody. He is now facing second-degree murder charges for the death of his mother because she died after the fall. He is facing assault charges for the attack on the bondsman. Linda was known as a kind woman who loved her pets and loved spending time with her family. I feel so sorry that she died in such a tragic manner, and I hope Caleb is locked up for good this time. I am quite confident that he will be, because he will not be able to find any bond company willing to bail him out now. Our next story takes us to St. Paul, Minnesota. In April of 2023, police get a call from a man claiming he cannot get in touch with his daughter, Manny Starren. The man said his daughter struggles with drug addiction and that she was supposed to enter a treatment facility, but she never checked in. He hadn't seen his daughter since the beginning of April. Manny has a son, and the man said that the baby's father told him his daughter had not been calling to check on the child like she always did. The child's father was concerned about Manny as well, especially because Manny told him that she'd lost her wallet and her keys. So the police asked the big question, is Manny married or in a relationship? You know, that's where they always go first. And the man said his daughter had been dating this man, Joseph Jorgensen. When the police asked the child's father about Joe, he told them that weeks earlier, Manny was upset because Joe had wrapped a rope around Manny's neck and strangled her with it during an argument. The police begin to look for Manny, and they find a neighbor of hers who had seen Manny with a black eye and bruises around her neck. This neighbor wanted to call the police, but Manny asked her not to. She said, "It'll just make things worse." The police find Manny's apartment manager, who tells them that Joe is a frequent visitor of Manny's apartment, and this manager has Joe's phone number, which he gives to the cops. 2 days later, the apartment manager called the police to inform them that he'd found surveillance video of Manny running from the apartment and Joe grabbing her and pushing her back inside. The manager said there was no video of Manny leaving the apartment after that, but Joe was seen on surveillance coming and going from the apartment several times, and that he was carrying 2 large duffel bags and a suitcase out of the apartment and loading them into a pickup truck. Joe had not reported Manny missing, but he told a neighbor that she'd gone to the store and never returned, and he thought someone named Costel had done something bad to her. The police obtain a search warrant and enter Manny's apartment. The TV screen was cracked and a window screen was on the floor. The fitted sheet was also missing from Manny's bed. Manny's father told police that Manny was a neat freak and her apartment was always very tidy, but it wasn't now. The police saw a dark stain that looked as though it might be blood, and samples were taken of that stain. The police obtained a warrant for Joe's Facebook account and for his cell phone, and this warrant allowed the police to track Joe's location. Manny had an EBT card, and the police pulled the records for usage of that card, and they saw that during the first week of May, Joe used the card in several locations. What was he buying? Lots and lots of cleaning supplies. They got a warrant for Joe's Gmail account and began to look through his search history. He'd been Googling things like, what do police do about a missing person? And how to use lime as in the substance that erodes flesh. They went back to the apartment and ran tests with luminol, and Manny's living room lit up everywhere. There was blood all over the place. Then they went to Joe's apartment, and when they did, he barricaded himself inside and lit the apartment on fire. The police broke down the door and a fight ensued. Joe even tried to take one of the officers' guns. This is why he looks so beat up in the photo. He was taken into custody and jailed. Joe also had a roommate who was home when the fight took place, and he was taken in for an interview. There was also a woman in the apartment who had bruises on her face and neck. So, this guy Joe is just a real piece of shit. The cops learned that a week earlier, Joe's apartment manager went to Joe's unit to inform him that people were complaining about a foul odor coming from his place. Joe wouldn't let the manager into the second bedroom. The police went to that bedroom and they found a large pool of blood on the floor of the closet. With Joe in custody, the police continued to search his phone records, and they see that on May 5th, Joe spent quite a bit of time at this storage unit facility, and they learned that Joe's roommate rented the storage unit that day. Joe is at the storage unit again on May 11th and May 18th. So the cops get a warrant for the storage unit and make entry. They are immediately hit with a very strong and foul odor. Inside the storage unit is a cooler wrapped in plastic, a large duffel bag, and a suitcase. The same suitcase seen in the surveillance video of Joe leaving Manny's apartment. The items are removed and taken to the medical examiner, who ran them through an X-ray machine before opening them. It was clear from the X-rays that the suitcase contained a human torso. The duffel bag had arms and legs inside, and the smaller bag contained a human head. This man had murdered someone and chopped them up into pieces. Joe then wrapped the pieces in multiple layers of cling wrap, which the medical examiner had to tediously unwrap so no evidence would be damaged. He then used Manny's dental records and tattoos to identify her. With Joseph Jorgensen in custody, people begin to come forward to alert the police that there is something else. In July of 2021, this woman named Fanta Zayavong disappeared. Fanta was a dancer at a strip club, and people in Joe's life knew that she had been seeing him. It's really sad to me that when she disappeared, not much was done about it. In fact, when I tried to find information about Fanta's disappearance, the only thing that comes up is this story, meaning she didn't even really have her own story. No story on her disappearance as a standalone. And yeah, that makes me sad. The police now know there is a second woman tied to Joseph Jorgensen who has vanished. They go through all the information they can find, and they learn that Joe has another storage unit in Coon Rapids. They get a warrant for that storage unit and make entry. Inside are the remains of Fanta Zayavong. She is badly decomposed, and investigators surmise she has been in that storage unit for years. The police interrogate Joe about this body, and he admits to killing Fanta at his apartment in Shoreview. Joseph Jorgensen enters a plea agreement. He pled guilty to 2 counts of second-degree murder. He is scheduled to be sentenced in February, but according to the plea agreement, he will be sentenced to 2 concurrent 40-year sentences, the statutory maximum for second-degree murder. I am so glad that this maniac is off the streets and locked in a cage where he belongs, and I want to send our love and support to the families of Manny and Fanta. I hope that Joseph's incarceration brings you a sense of justice for his terrible crimes. You know, sometimes people are just the worst. We know that. But even knowing that, it never ceases to amaze me how diabolical and selfish some people can be. This story begins in Jacksonville, Florida. This is Jose Lantigua. He is well known in the area for owning a discount furniture company chain, and people knew him because he starred in his own commercials for the stores. He often donated to charities, and he went to all the local business functions and galas, raising money for those in need and for other area businesses. In 2011, he met this woman, Daphne Simpson, and the two fell in love. Daphne says Jose was kind and charitable, but that he was also very intriguing because, you see, Jose Lantigua is an international man of mystery, a CIA agent and former Black Ops military man. You already know where this is going because we see this all the time in the true crime community. How many times do we hear about these guys claiming to be CIA or special forces? It's really quite pathetic. 6 months after marrying Daphne, Jose sits his new wife down with some horrible news. He is dying of what? Mad cow disease. He tells her that during a special forces mission in the jungles of South America, he contracted the rare disease and Daphne is devastated. They go to a doctor who confirms Jose's diagnosis. They get an MRI. Daphne sees the images and is told that yes, Jose has BSE, which is bovine spongiform encephalopathy. Jose and Daphne then fly to Miami to deliver the horrible news to Jose's children. But after they do so, Jose has something else to tell Daphne. He isn't dying. The whole thing is a ruse. Why? Because he is being hunted by a drug cartel whose leader was killed by Jose's special forces team years earlier. The cartel now wants Jose dead, and he is a marked man. This cartel has also threatened Jose's family, and Jose tells Daphne that the only way to protect her and his children is for him to fake his own death. Daphne tells Jose that she understands and wants everyone to be safe, so she agrees to help him. In 2013, Jose takes a trip to Venezuela where he vanishes. Daphne then flies to South America with $20,000 in cash, and with that money, Jose purchases a fake death certificate. It even says he's been cremated. Daphne takes the fake death certificate to the American embassy, and Jose is recorded as being dead. Daphne then begins filling out the paperwork on 7 different life insurance policies, totaling $6.6 million. 7 policies. Why is this money so important to this millionaire and successful business owner? Because Jose was drowning in debt, and his stores had been operating in the red for years. He owed everyone money, and the stores were failing all over the area. Jose then secretly makes his way back to the States, and he and Daphne begin living in a mountain home they'd purchased in North Carolina, the place they'd honeymooned at and fallen in love with. But it doesn't take long for the red flags to be raised. 7 life insurance policies, stories of mad cow disease, and Black Ops Special Forces missions. I mean, come on. An investigation begins in 2016. Federal agents stopped Daphne and Jose on a North Carolina road near their mountain home. Jose was living under a fake name. I mean, they had a funeral for this man. His kids thought he was dead. Both Jose and Daphne are taken into custody, but the cops quickly realize that Daphne has been hornswoggled. She was really believing that they had done this in order to keep everyone safe. So she is given, I think, 6 months probation on house arrest. But the feds aren't letting Jose off so easily. Jose goes on trial and gets 14 years in prison for the stunt. But just recently, the feds released information stating that Jose has continued to con everyone, even from inside prison. There are allegations that this entire time, Jose has been hiding millions of dollars in assets. And even though the feds believed they'd uncovered them all, now they aren't so sure. Has the Furniture King been keeping another big secret? Is there a stash of money somewhere waiting for Jose to get out of prison in 2030 and grab it? Make a dash to another foreign country? I'll keep you updated if we find out more. But yeah. Sometimes life is dull, I get it, but we all got to pay our bills. And you don't put your kids through a fake funeral because you owe people money. The holidays are a stressful time, and we see an increase in family violence during Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. It's a sad fact, but it's been happening for a very long time, and every year we see terrible things taking place at family gatherings. This year was no exception. On January 2nd, reports started circulating that 8 to 10 police cars were parked outside this West Greenwich, Rhode Island home. A man, woman, and 2 children lived inside the house, and the woman's co-worker had called the police because she hadn't shown up for work in several days, which is something that hasn't happened before. The police arrived at the home to do a wellness check and quickly realized something was very wrong. They made entry into the home and found all 4 people inside dead, victims of a family annihilation, after which the killer took their own life. This story is brand new. The names of the family members have not even been released. We don't even know who the shooter was at this time. Neighbors told media members that the family was very quiet and very isolated. It will be very interesting to me to find out whether or not the children were homeschooled, because as I've said many times, despite the fact that it makes some people very angry, we often see homeschooling as an element in family annihilations. Not always, but often. The percentage of people who homeschool their kids is very small, and we shouldn't see it as often as we do in family annihilations because there just aren't that many people that do it. Every time I talk about this, people get mad. Keep getting mad. The facts are the facts. Nobody's saying that everyone that homeschools their kids are bad, but I do this 50 hours a week, and I very often see homeschooling as a factor in family annihilations. That can't be denied. There is also talk that the woman was pregnant. This has not been confirmed at this time, but it's awful. A neighbor interviewed said that around 5 a.m. on January 2nd, he heard popping noises. He thought it was most likely someone still setting off fireworks for the new year, and that's why he didn't report anything. He now knows that he most likely heard the murders of 3 people and the death at their own hand of a 4th.
That breaking news brings us to West Greenwich, where authorities found 4 bodies shot in a home on Cheyenne Trail. Authorities haven't released who the people are or if they're related, but neighbors are telling us who live there.
Police have not yet released the IDs of those victims or their connection with the home, but neighbors say that number is consistent with the mother, father, and 2 children they believe to live there. Now, this all started when a co-worker of one of the victims called police requesting a welfare check this morning after that victim had not been showing up to work. When police did arrive this morning, they found all 4 victims dead with gunshot wounds within the home. Now, some neighbors tell me, though, they believe those shots might have been fired yesterday.
Yeah, Thursday morning around 5 o'clock to like 5:30, 5:20, I would say. I just heard like popping noises, and it was like back to back to back to back. And like I hear, obviously I hear fireworks around here. I know what that sounds like. Every once in a while, gunshots, maybe because of like hunting, or I mean, there's a gun range down the road, but nothing like what I heard right there.
There is playground equipment at the home, so I'm assuming that the children are young, maybe not school age yet. I will keep you updated as we learn more on this story, but police have said there is no danger to the public. This confirms that the shooter is also dead inside the house. One officer told a reporter, quote, "I've been in law enforcement for 35 years, and this is by far one of the worst scenes I've ever attended."
And I've been in law enforcement now for 35 years, and this is probably one of the worst scenes that I've had to deal with. And in a community like ours, you really don't expect it. But these things do happen, and we're going to do our best to determine what happened and why it happened.
I'll let you know when we find out who the family was. This next story is so bizarre and so tragic. On December 8th, just weeks ago in Fayette County, Alabama, there was a terrible car crash. 40-year-old Stephen Collins was driving his truck with his wife, 22-year-old Wendy Bailey, and their 2-year-old daughter, Riley, inside. No one was wearing a seatbelt, and the baby was not in a car seat, which just infuriates me. And when I say terrible car crash, this Toyota Tacoma is completely destroyed, wrapped around a tree as it flew and flipped off CR 73 near Winfield, Alabama. A crash investigation revealed that Stephen Collins was driving 90 plus miles an hour on a wet and curvy road. And here's the thing. There are no tire tracks or skid marks. Stephen didn't even try to stop. So there is speculation that the crash was intentional. Stephen was taken to UAB hospital where he died the next day. Wendy was life-flighted to another hospital where she was placed in intensive care. 2-year-old Riley was dead at the scene. I can't stop saying it, you guys. I'm so done with shitty parents. I'm just so done. As Wendy lies in a hospital bed, investigators begin receiving phone calls from people in the area who are concerned about Caleb. Who is Caleb? The couple's 1-year-old son. Investigators go back to the scene of the accident and widen the search. In a crash like this, it is possible for a small body to be thrown hundreds of feet. So they think perhaps they missed the body of the little boy, which is just a horrific thought all on its own. Cops search the entire area and they confirm there is no 4th body. Caleb is not there. Immediately, a missing child alert is issued. Alabama police put out missing posters and a photo of Caleb. And at first, they believe someone will come forward saying they have the child. Perhaps he was with a family member and had been spared. But as hours and then days go by, it becomes apparent that no one knows where Caleb is. This is a 1-year-old. Authorities go to the family home where this man, John Elton Bailey, also resides. He is Wendy Bailey's father. He is also Caleb's guardian. John claims he does not know where Caleb is and that in fact, he has not seen the baby in months. This is one hell of a family. As John is questioned, it becomes clear that John knows something, and so he is arrested for failing to report a missing child. Obviously, if you are aware that a baby has gone missing, you have a lawful duty to report that to the authorities. And if you don't, you can be arrested. Police begin to ask neighbors, family members, and friends of Stephen and Wendy if they have seen the baby lately. None of them had. One person reports that Stephen told him Caleb was very sick and had gone to live with family members. Another person reports that Wendy told him Caleb had gone to stay with a family friend. Stephen posted on his Facebook that his son was very sick and that, quote, his organs were growing, but not in his body. I don't even know what that means. What does that mean? The post continued, our son is not doing well. He has major back issues. He has to have surgery at some point. Keep him in your prayers. As I was searching Stephen's Facebook, I also found this disgusting post, which I've already talked about this. I started a huge fight on TikTok when I talked about how hitting little children is not discipline, it's abuse. And I was sickened by how many people still think hitting a child is anything but abuse. Children learn absolutely nothing from spanking except trauma and sadness, and the studies prove it. So go fight with the experts about it, because that's what you're getting from me. I know where I stand, and absolutely nothing will change my mind. Spanking is abuse. Hitting a child is abuse. Hitting anyone is abuse. And we don't teach people not to hit by hitting them. Die mad about it. But looking at Stephen's post made me absolutely sick, knowing that he is an actual child abuser. Not putting your baby in a car seat is child abuse, period. That's not my opinion. That's the law. During their investigation, cops learned that the last time Caleb was seen by anyone but perhaps Wendy and Stephen was in September. No one has seen Caleb in October, November, or the first week of December. So you're damn right, put that grandfather in jail. He had contact with the family and he was aware that baby was missing. He was a guardian. I couldn't find details as to why John was listed as a guardian and a custodian. Obviously, there were some sort of issues in the family and the court had intervened at some point. I don't know if John had full custody, but he did have a duty to report. The police decide it's time to arrest Wendy, and she is taken right from the hospital to the jail, where she is booked and charged with aggravated child abuse, domestic violence, abuse of a corpse, and criminally negligent homicide for the death of the baby that died in the car accident. Information has not been released regarding whether or not Wendy has made any statements to the police regarding Caleb's whereabouts. We don't yet know what she is claiming, but we do know that the police believe Caleb is dead. We are most likely looking at the murder of a baby here. The police are asking that if you know anything at all, you call 205-932-3205. I am hoping for the best for baby Caleb, but sadly, I do not believe there will be a good outcome. Not very fun stories today, but hopefully this little guy will cheer you up a little. Thank you for joining us today on Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. Would you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you hadn't? Mulder wants you to. Mulder wants you to. Thank you to all of my patrons on Patreon. I truly appreciate your support. You know, I've got 2 podcasts. This podcast over here is called Dining with Death. It's an archival series. And this podcast is the current podcast, Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. I post brand new episodes every Monday and Wednesday. I hope you're enjoying the new year and that you're safe and happy and well. Stay safe, my friends, and be kind to each other. And I will see you next time on Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. Bye.